Hi, guys. Welcome back from specials. I hope you're having a great day so far, and I hope you're following expectations. Today, we are going to talk about the Battle of Yorktown, and this is going to be our last talk for the American Revolution. I know you guys like talking about the American Revolution, but we're actually getting to the end, and this is the last battle of the American Revolution. So, the Battle of Yorktown, and we need to talk about the order in which the battles occurred. So, we talked about the French and Indian War, and then we have the Proclamation of 1763. And the French and Indian War, remember, it's not the French and the Indians or Native Americans fighting against each other. That is the French joining with the Native Americans fighting against the British. And what that did was gave the colonists a lot more land that they wanted to explore but couldn't. And that's where the Proclamation of 1763 comes in. That's where we start seeing a lot of tension. Then we have the Boston Tea Party, which you guys know a little bit about. And then we have the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And then we just talked about the Battle at Saratoga, and we also talk about a little bit about the French coming in and the importance of that. And so this is the Battle of Yorktown, and this is called the battle that won independence. And you guys will see why here in just a second. So the facts of this battle took place in Yorktown in Virginia on 28th of September to the 19th of October. So it was quite a long battle, and this is in 1781. So if you look at the Proclamation of 1763 all the way to now to 1781, it's quite a long war. This was the Americans and the French fighting against the British, and this was important that the French were on the American side at this point, and that is what led to victory for the American colonists. The generals were General Washington and General Lord Cornwallis for the British. You won't have to know the general for the French, but I listed it here. I'm not going to try to say it because I don't want to butcher it, but all you have to know is this was one of George Washington's best victories, being a general for the colonists. Now, the size of the armies. This was the first battle that the American colonies really outnumbered the British pretty heavily. So you have 8,800 Americans, 7,800 French, and 6,000 British. So the Americans by themselves outnumbered the British, but again, they weren't as skilled. They got training, and we've talked about that, but they still weren't as skilled as the British. And so having the French come in and really outnumber the British 2-1 really, really helped. Some of the questions I want you to be able to answer at the end of this video is, why is this battle known as the battle that won American independence? Who is the American commander? I don't care about the French commander. And who was the British commander? And did the American alliance or the British have more troops? And we talk about the American alliance because it was the Americans and the French. So here's a map of the Battle of Yorktown, and you can tell the British, being in red, they were kind of surrounded. You have some American forces and some French forces up in the top right, and then you have the York River, and then you have kind of a half circle all around Yorktown. And this was kind of how the French and the Americans won the war. They decided to basically trap the British in Yorktown, and they didn't let any reinforcements for the British come in. So once they ran out of food and once they ran out of supplies, they were kind of screwed. And the British didn't really realize that until the end. So they were trying to get supplies and trying to get more food and more ammunition. But George Washington just made sure that nothing got in or out of Yorktown. And that was the demise of the British. So what was important about this map of the Battle of Yorktown? What were the British forces missing that the American or French forces had? And what mistake did the British forces make? So I'm going to let you look at this for just a few seconds, and you can pause the video if you would like, but I just want you to look at it and kind of see what are things that you notice and what things are you wondering about with this battle. And it sucks that I'm not here to hear your questions in person, but we will be talking about this on Tuesday. But I want you to just think about all the questions that you have, and I want you to add that to the discussion board that's going to be on Canvas. So the battle, the French fleet effectively blocked aid from Cornwallis. So again, they wanted to get supplies and ammunition into Yorktown, but they weren't allowing it. And then George Washington made life unbearable for the British troops with 3 weeks of bombing. So this battle really lasted up to 3 weeks. And with the British having the numbers that they did and being outnumbered 2-1, the British didn't want to push out and just run into the fight because they knew they were going to lose. They knew they were outnumbered. If it was just American colonists that outnumbered the British, they might have took the battle to them because of the lack of training that they had. But because it was French and British, they didn't want to push that because they knew they were going to lose in the end. So the British were running low on food and ammunition that, like we talked about, and they were still awaiting help, and this help would never come. King George was at the point where he was tired of losing troops. He was tired of fighting a battle that he was losing a lot of money on. The British were really, really big on money at this point. And if we think about it, the French were kind of like third partiers in Fortnite when they see two people battling and they jump in to take the loot. This was kind of like what the French did. The French were really big, opportunistic people. They jumped in, they helped America, ended up winning this battle, and because of that, got the American colonists to be able to have great trade partners and a great alliance that's still strong today. So why could the British not resupply their forces in Yorktown? And if we go back to the map, you can see that they had nowhere to get the supplies. Maybe down here in the York River, a little bit on the top left of the map, but the French ended up rotating across the York River and didn't let any supplies get in or out. Again, at before this time, the American colonists were considered a militia, but right now they're considered an army. And especially with the French troops, they are strongly considered a military. So the outcome of the French and Indian War was that they surrendered on October 19th, 1781, and Britain signed the Treaty of Paris. And I know what you're thinking. The Treaty of Paris was the thing that was written to end the French and Indian War. But this was also the Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution. So it helps that it's the same thing. They just still called it the Treaty of Paris because that's where they signed it. They weren't very clever with coming up names. They weren't very creative at this point. So this officially ended the war, but more importantly, it recognizes American independence. So Britain agreed to remove all of its troops from America, so ending the Quartering Act and ending all the acts. It set new borders for the official United States. Now they were considered the United States because Britain, still when they were fighting the war, they felt that America was still a part of Britain and they were just kind of fighting with each other. And America agreed to pay all the existing debt owed to Britain, not to prosecute any loyalists still in America, and allow those left in America that were considered loyalists to return. So remember, we have those two groups. We have the loyalists that were still very loyal to Britain and didn't want to be in this war because they didn't believe that Britain was doing anything wrong, and they still believed that they were Britain's citizens. And then we had the Federalists, and the Federalists were the ones that believed that America shouldn't be treated the way they were, and the no taxation without representation. So the big one was that America agreed to pay all their existing debt owed to Britain. This took some time, but French did help them out a little bit. And they didn't prosecute any loyalists that decided to stay in America. So if you were a loyalist at the time, you had the choice. So basically, they got a few ships and they said, you want to go to Britain? Here you go. If you don't, you can stay and we won't prosecute you for your crimes. And a lot of loyalists ended up going back to Britain. So the population for America did dip a little bit. So why was it important that the British were forced to sign their loss to the American colonies in the Treaty of Paris? I want you to think about this for a second before I tell you. So this was important because Britain really hasn't lost any wars. this kind of signals the first loss in Britain. And Britain right now is the most powerful country in the world. So them signing that they lost the American Revolution not only acknowledged America as a new country, but acknowledged that Britain might not be as strong as people think they were. And this kind of plays in a little later, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit later. But the Treaty of Paris was really, really important because it not only signaled that America was a new country, but that Britain wasn't as powerful as they might have said that they were. And so I want to show you a little bit of the Treaty of Paris. I want to read just a little bit of it. So this is the transcript from the actual Treaty of Paris that was signed. And it said, if having pleased the divine providence to dispose the hearts of the most serene and most potent Prince George III, by the grace of God, King of Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Luxembourg, Arch-Treasurer and Prince-Elector of the Holy Roman Empire, etc., and the United States of America. So this was the first acknowledgement that the United States was the United States of America. This was the very first acknowledgement, was the Treaty of Paris. To forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have happily interrupted the good correspondence of friendship which they mutually wish to restore. I will tell you right now, this was a very big business move and a very big political move. So calling it a misunderstanding is a very, very big wrongdoing in Britain's part. And the fact that America let this happen is kind of frustrating as an American citizen. And it should be frustrating to you as an American citizen as well. That would be like if you got really, really mad at your sister or your brother and you felt that you deserved more respect, and then your parents just called it a misunderstanding. And that wasn't the case. Britain took advantage of the colonists and tried to make the colonists pay for their mistakes. So the French and Indian War was something that Britain did that the colonists didn't really have a say in. And even when we got new land, it didn't matter. It was still Britain's land. And that made the colonists upset. And because they were broke, because Britain was broke, they taxed America heavily. Again, not America's fault. It was Britain's lack of managing money. And to call it a misunderstanding is a little unjust. And unjust meaning that it's just not right. And differences that the unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship at which they mutually wish to restore. So restore meaning there was a friendship in the first place, and once America met in the Continental Congress, remember their meeting to write that they were being independent, the Continental Congress, ever since that point, they weren't friends. They were not friends at all. Were they friends in the Quartering Act when the British just walked into your home and said, you're going to make me whatever I want, and I'm going to sit here, I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to watch whatever show I want, and then I'm going to go to bed? No, they weren't friends. Were they friends when they said, all right, you can drink your tea if you want to be Britain, but you're going to pay for it? Oh, and by the way, you can't have any Dutch tea. No, they weren't friends at that point. Were they friends when the British tried to go and capture Thomas Jefferson and Samuel Adams from Lexington and Concord? No, they weren't friends. So the fact that they want to restore friendship is trying to save face. And that is a saying that politics use, save face, trying to make Britain not look like a bad guy, and to establish such a beneficial and satisfactory intercourse between the two countries upon the ground of reciprocal advantages and mutual convenience as may promote and secure the both perpetual peace and harmony. Oh my gosh, what in the world does that even mean? All that means is that in the end, they want to be able to trade with each other and not be mad at each other. No hard feelings, buddy, is basically what it was. So Britain kind of said, all right, you won, you can have your independence. No hard feelings for all this crap I put you through. And I'll tell you right now, once we become a nation and start establishing a government, we have some hard feelings. And so we were really buddies with the French, and we kind of kept to that. We were just like, all right, Britain, still kind of screw you. I'm not really wanting to be with you anymore, but I'm gonna hang out with the France. France still hates them. They're like, I'm still upset about the French and Indian War. So screw you, Britain. So Britain kind of was on their own for a little bit. And having the desirable end already laid the foundation of peace and reconciliation. So reconciliation just means they want peace. They want to get along eventually. Provided by the articles signed at Paris on the 30th of November 1782 by the commissioners empowered on each part, which articles were agreed to be inserted in the constitute. The Treaty of Paris proposed to be concluded between the Crown of Great Britain and the said United States. The said United States. That's kind of a weird interpretation, at least for me. I don't know if it is for you, but for me it's a weird saying. So they call themselves the Crown of Great Britain, the pinnacle of the world, Great Britain. Also, let's think about that for a second. It's kind of like self-centered to call yourself Great Britain, but I mean, that's just me. I personally, doesn't matter. But the said United States, like you're saying you're the United States. In my opinion, Britain kind of feels that they grew the empire that became the United States. At this point, Britain's like, okay, you can call yourself the United States, but we made you. Like, we funded you. We made sure everything was okay. Ever since Jamestown, you're still kind of British. No matter what you say, the blood's still British. So I know we shot at each other, but, you can have your little day in the sun, but time will come where you're going to come crawling back. I think that's a lot of the British mindset at this point was, yeah, you're mad. Yeah, we fought this war, but eventually it'll come back around because the world's not a fun place. But which treaty could not be concluded until terms of peace shall be agreed upon between Great Britain and France. So again, this is where France comes in. Great Britain says, I'm not going to worry about the United States until France and I get along, because I don't want France jumping in any other wars I'm involved in. Because Britain thought to themselves, we're going to win this war. And then France said, are you sure about that? Are you really sure? Because I'm coming. I'm going to shoot you in the face. So Britain made sure in this treaty, they said, France, you and I have to get along before anything else can happen. I really could care less about the United States. Like, we'll just take them out. If you didn't jump in, we're going to take them out. So let's get along, and everything else is going to fall into place. And one more thing I wanted to share with you was right here. Benjamin Franklin, the celebrity of France at the time. And I want to ask you the question of why he was such a big celebrity in France. So I'll give you a second to think about it. You can pause the video and think about it and go back in your notes. But I want to give you just a minute to think about it. But so he was a celebrity in France because he went over and negotiated for France to come join the war after the Battle of Saratoga. So that is kind of the big ending, culminating ideas of the American Revolution. So if we go in order, we have the French and Indian War, which kicked off the tension between Britain and the colonists. Proclamation of 1763, which ticked off the colonists. Boston Tea Party, which was a direct result of all the acts that we talked about. So we have the Quartering Act, the Sugar Act, the Tea Act, Stamp Act. Then we start getting into Lexington and Concord. And then we start getting into the Battle of Saratoga. And then George Washington starts coming into play. We start seeing George Washington. Then we finally get to the Battle of Yorktown. So I know we took a while to talk about all this, but this was like a 20-year war, and it really had big implications on the future of the world. So there is a assignment on Canvas that I want you to talk about, and that I want you to do, and it's called End of the American Revolution. So go ahead and do that. And if you have any questions, please email me. But it should be pretty easy. So thank you.